Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most important shifts in the entire Russia-Ukraine war, something many analysts have described as a turning point that could redefine the course of the conflict. The idea that Ukrainian forces have effectively cut off Crimea isn't just another headline or a routine battlefield update. It's something that reaches deep into military strategy, political symbolism, and the future shape of security in Eastern Europe. So in today's video, we're breaking down what this development actually means, why it matters, and how it could reshape everything that comes next. To understand why this event is so significant, we have to step back a little and look at how Crimea became such a crucial point in the first place. Since Russia's annexation of the peninsula in 2014, Crimea has acted as both a strategic fortress and a logistical hub. It's from Crimea that Russia has launched air raids, maintained naval dominance in the Black Sea, and supplied its forces positioned in southern Ukraine. For years, it has been one of Russia's most important footholds. But that level of importance also makes it one of the biggest pressure points. And Ukraine has spent a long time finding ways to push on that pressure. When the war escalated in 2022, the Crimean Peninsula became not just a symbol of occupation, but a central artery for Russian logistics. Supplies traveled through the land corridor across southern Ukraine and over the Kerch Bridge, which connected mainland Russia to Crimea. That bridge, a massive multi-billion-dollar project, represented Russia's pride, confidence, and claim of permanence. It wasn't only for moving troops and weapons, it was a political statement. So when Ukrainian operations began targeting that route, the repercussions grew bigger than just damaged infrastructure. Over time, Ukraine has reshaped its strategy. Instead of focusing purely on large-scale offensives, it shifted to precision strikes, sabotage operations, drone attacks, and long-range missile campaigns. The goal wasn't always to immediately reclaim territory, but to weaken the systems that support Russia's hold. In that wider plan, Crimea became the ultimate target. Cutting it off doesn't necessarily require storming the beaches or breaking through heavily defended front lines. Sometimes breaking a supply chain can be just as effective as breaking through trenches. So when reports began emerging that Ukraine had effectively isolated the peninsula, striking the Kerch Bridge, hitting supply depots, damaging rail lines, and sinking or disabling transport ships, the picture became clearer. Ukraine is moving toward a full strategic encirclement of Crimea, and that's the moment many analysts describe as this changes everything. But it's not only the bridge. Over the past year, Ukraine has struck Russian airbases, naval assets, fuel storage sites, radar networks, and air defense systems throughout Crimea. Each of these targets has a purpose. Hitting air defense systems makes it easier for future strikes. Damaging fuel depots restricts mobility. Destroying radar infrastructure creates blind spots. Disrupting rail lines forces Russia to rely on slower, more vulnerable alternatives. Piece by piece, Ukraine has chipped away at the peninsula's ability to sustain a large military presence. One of the biggest problems Russia now faces is the sheer difficulty of supplying tens of thousands of troops stationed in Crimea without stable routes. The peninsula isn't self-reliant. It heavily depends on imported fuel, imported ammunition, and imported food. The water supply has faced repeated disruptions. Electricity infrastructure has also been strained. By targeting these systems, Ukraine doesn't just cause temporary inconvenience, it makes long-term military occupation more expensive, more fragile, and harder to justify. The psychological impact is also enormous. For Russian forces stationed in the region, knowing that they are on a peninsula with increasingly limited escape routes does something to morale. Soldiers talk, officers worry, and commanders have to rethink every logistical plan. If a route can't be trusted, it can't be used. And if it can't be used, the troops who rely on it are left vulnerable. Now, let's talk about why this moment could mark a turning point. For Ukraine, cutting off Crimea is not just a tactical victory. It's a strategic objective that could shape the entire war. Crimea is often described as the center of gravity of Russia's military position in the south. Without it, Russia loses its strongest naval base, its best airfields, and a key launch point for operations deeper into Ukraine. Losing Crimea, or even facing the possibility of losing it, forces Russia to rethink its whole operational structure. When a military relies heavily on a single strategic point, isolating that point can cause the entire structure to weaken. Think of it as removing a keystone from an arch. Everything that rests on top becomes unstable. That's essentially what Ukraine is attempting to do. By cutting off Crimea, it weakens Russia's military in the south. It limits Russia's flexibility. It forces Russia to move resources from other fronts. And it creates political consequences that ripple far beyond the battlefield. For the Kremlin, Crimea has always been a powerful symbol of national pride. Losing control there would be politically devastating. That's why Russian forces have poured so much effort into defending it. But the more Ukraine targets it, the more costly it becomes for Russia to maintain that grip. A territory that was once an asset could rapidly become a liability, and that shift alone could alter how Russia approaches the conflict moving forward. For Ukraine's Western partners, this development is also incredibly important, as Ukraine demonstrates that it can strike strategic assets and weaken Russia's strongest positions. Support becomes easier to justify. Military aid looks more effective. Long-range capabilities suddenly appear to have decisive impact. And the idea of Ukraine forcing Russia into a weakened negotiating position becomes more realistic. That's why the cutting off of Crimea isn't only a military milestone. It's a diplomatic one as well. Another important element of this situation is the evolution of warfare. What we're seeing in Ukraine right now is not a traditional battle over trenches and towns alone. It's a battle over infrastructure, supply chains, and technological superiority. Ukraine's use of drones, precision missiles, naval drones, electronic warfare, and sabotage teams represents a new era of conflict. The ability to target a hive, you asset hundreds of miles away changes everything. It means geography becomes less of a limitation. It means heavily defended areas are no longer invulnerable. Crimea, which once seemed unreachable, is now exposed in ways that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. And then we have the broader implications. If Ukraine maintains pressure and continues to cut supply lines, Crimea becomes harder for Russia to defend, harder to supply, and harder to justify holding. That creates a cascading series of challenges. Russia may be forced to divert troops from other areas. It may have to move more air defense systems to Crimea, weakening its positions elsewhere. It may have to stretch its logistics even thinner than they already are. And in a long war like this one, logistics can often matter more than firepower. The effects extend beyond just military calculations. For civilians in Crimea, shortages become more frequent, fuel becomes harder to access, electricity becomes unstable, transportation becomes unpredictable, the sense of security erodes. When a population loses confidence in the occupying force's ability to provide stability, that occupation becomes even more fragile. But it's important to remember that nothing about this situation is simple. Cutting off Crimea does not automatically end the war. It doesn't guarantee a rapid collapse of Russian forces, and it certainly doesn't eliminate the possibility of escalation. Russia could retaliate more aggressively, it could shift its tactics, it could reinforce other areas. These are all real possibilities, and Ukraine knows it. That's why strategy matters so much here. Every strike, every operation, every decision about timing is planned with precision. Ukraine's approach isn't about rushing into Crimea with a large invasion force. It's about creating conditions where any Russian presence there becomes unsustainable. It's about breaking the logistics that keep an army functioning. It's about making the cost of holding Crimea higher than the benefits of controlling it. And as that cost rises, the political pressure rises with it. This is also why so many analysts describe the situation as this changes everything. The war is no longer only about contested cities in the east or advances in the south. It's about strategic pressure. It's about cutting off a crucial point that Russia has relied on for years. And once that point is compromised, Russia's position across southern Ukraine becomes much weaker. For Ukraine, this moment offers hope. It demonstrates that even against a larger army, strategic thinking and precision operations can yield powerful results. It shows the world that Ukraine is capable not just of defending itself, but of undermining one of Russia's most fortified positions. And it signals to Russia that the war will not follow the script it expected. In the coming months, the world will be watching closely. The question isn't just whether Ukraine can keep Crimea cut off, it's whether Russia can adapt, whether supplies can still reach troops there, whether defensive lines can hold, whether morale can survive, and whether political pressure inside Russia begins to grow. But one thing is clear: Ukraine has shifted the dynamics of the war. By isolating Crimea, it has struck at the heart of Russia's southern strategy. And that's why, whether or not this leads to immediate breakthroughs, the ripple effect is already visible. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sticking with this deep dive. If you enjoyed this breakdown or found it informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts about this situation. Do you think Ukraine can maintain the pressure? Do you think Russia will find new ways to supply Crimea? Or is this the beginning of a major turning point? I look forward to hearing what you think.